Good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to have you join us. We have a nice little group here on this wonderful, if beginning to be winter day here in Iowa. And I hope wherever you are out there in cyberspace that it's lovely weather and giving you a suggestion too of winter, which is sort of long overdue in a way. We've had some really warm weather this last week, and yesterday it was 30 degrees warmer than it is today. I thought about chose tonight's topic because the winter months can be difficult for people. And many people experience that they feel sad, they don't have much energy, they may not feel deeply invested in the things that they're supposed to be doing, particularly in things like celebrating the holidays. There are a lot of reasons for this, but it's a very real phenomenon. And it's brought on in some people because of physiological reasons, because of lack of daylight primarily and colder weather. And in other people, it's more psychological. It's more on the level of how they're feeling about what's going on in their life at that particular time, how things are unfolding in their life. And so it seemed reasonable at this time of year, as we head into the holiday season, to clear away some of the things that make us feel sad in the winter months. For a lot of people, facing the holidays, it really is quite challenging. For many people, it's either being with family or facing being with family or facing not being with family. In this community of the enlightened, there is a joke, which is very simple. If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. Being with family tends to bring out certain qualities within us that we wish wouldn't come out. We often get into arguments with people. We may find ourselves being very short with people. We may find that we just bicker a lot, often over very trivial things like setting the table and what we're going to have for breakfast and things like that. Being back in our family environment, for those who are making that kind of trip, is not always a really pleasant thing, or at least not entirely pleasant. And oftentimes in anticipation of that, we can develop either a great deal of anxiety or just feel kind of down. Of course, the flip side is also true. If we're not going to be with family, we may also feel, we may feel very lonely and cut off and seek either friends in our environment or increase our communication with folks back home, or crawl into our bed and pull the covers up over our head and hope that when we wake up, that winter has passed, the holidays have passed, and everything is back to normal. So facing the holidays can be a really difficult thing. For some people, one of the biggest problems is figuring out what sort of presents to buy and give to people, or make and give to people. Some people are very skillful at that kind of thing. They know what people like, or maybe they've heard them talk about something, perhaps even very innocently, not really dropping a hint, but just saying, "Oh, I really like, that style of shirt or that kind of object." And if you're astute to that kind of thing during the year, then you have a good idea what you might possibly buy for them at the holidays. But if you're not terribly astute at that kind of thing, got one here, then the holidays could actually be kind of a difficult time, and you may find yourself facing you might say, the deadline of a holiday and not having a gift chosen for one or more people, because you just really have a hard time figuring out what it is that somebody might want. In this modern age, of course, the obvious way around that is to give gift cards, where you don't have to pick something out. Or the other thing that you can do is to go to somebody's wish list online and give them something that they have decided they actually want. And I actually really like that myself, because being, shall we say, handicapped in the area of picking out gifts for people, giving people things that they have indicated that they actually want, I find tremendously gratifying. Some of you may have heard of there's actually a book called The Five Languages of Love. And it's a very charming book, and it's very simple. There are basically 5 ways that we show and receive love. And each of us has our preferences, how we like to receive love and how we like to give love. And then one of the interesting things you can do is run the exercise and see whether you can guess how your significant other or other people in your lives would choose. Do you know how people like to give or receive love? The 5 languages, let's see if I can remember them now. The first one is words of appreciation and gratitude, saying things to people. And many people, that's a really satisfying thing. They like doing it, or they like hearing words of praise or words of gratitude from other people. The next one is acts of service, things that people do for each other. Within couples, some people might cook the meals or take out the trash, make the beds, empty the trash cans, or do other acts of service, do shopping, take the kids to things, and so on and so forth. So acts of service are often seen by people as ways that they express their love, and many people appreciate those kinds of things being done for them. And hopefully they show that by expressing their gratitude when people do those kinds of things. But they are, again, a language of expressing and receiving love. The third one, let's see if I can remember what the third one is. Let's see, words of appreciation, acts of service. It's not coming to me at the moment. Gifts, yes. Thank you. Somebody's prompting me. Gifts are the third language of love, giving things to people and receiving them. How could I forget that? I was just talking about gifts. And so for many people, and I'm sure if you think about it, you know people who always like to give something. If they ever come over, they bring something. It might be food, or it might be some object. Other people on the other side like to receive gifts and are, just delighted when somebody gives them something. So that's the third language of love. The next category, actually, the fourth one is quality time. And that means spending time with somebody where you're really with them. And that might just be talking about something, or you're sharing in an activity, but it's not just that you're both doing something together, it's that you're doing it in a way that is symbiotic, that you're relating to each other as you do that. And so quality time is a very important one. The last one is physical acts of affection and physical contact. And for most people, that one is very important because the absence of that can feel like there's something not connecting. So the physical connection is very important for most people. So it is said that more women prefer quality time and more men prefer acts of affection. That always brings a kind of a chuckle. I don't know if apparently the statistics bear that out, but people have actually studied this. In my own experience with people, I'm not sure which is the strongest one in general. And that is, I'm not sure there's a gender bias or predilection there. It seems that both people, both males and females, prefer quality time and physical contact, physical acts of expressing love in various ways, holding hands, hugging, dancing together, many ways of expressing love, and they're all rather obvious. So One of the things about the holidays then is that if you do not have the opportunities to give and receive these various forms of expressing love, you can feel quite isolated and lonely and depressed, very sad at the holidays. And so people who live alone, people who are single, and we're talking adults here, can feel very cut off at the holidays, and looking forward to the holidays, therefore, as a time when they feel like they're supposed to have lots of family and love and connection with people. And if they know they're not having that, or if they feel that they just can't do that, then that can be very painful and make them very sad. Sometimes, of course, we're in a state because either we've been sick or perhaps a loved one has passed away. So the holidays often bring out or accentuate the feelings of loneliness because we have an expectation at the holidays that we should be close to people. And particularly if we've just lost a spouse or some other significant other person in our life, then there's that feeling that we're really missing something, and it's a very sad and uncomfortable thing for us. Pardon me. So those are the kinds of things that we often confront as the holidays come upon us, that may make us feel sad, lonely, isolated, and just generally unhappy. And the manifestations of that, we don't always recognize that. And I think it's important to know what that actually looks like for us. The way it often manifests is that we have trouble getting things done. Sometimes it's getting out of bed. Sometimes it's going to bed. Sometimes it's just attending to the things that need attention. We just put them off. We don't really own up to them or own up to the fact that they need to be done. And I just caught myself today. I was supposed to have written the check to somebody that's supposed to get a check, corporation, and I had put that off. Oh, I'll do that later. I'll do that later. And I just discovered today that it's now late, and that was kind of created an awkward feeling in me. And I realized that I'd been procrastinating about that. So procrastination is one of those things that often is a sign that we're not into our life. We're not living our life with full vitality. We're our energy is down, and our feeling level is down, and our connection to our life is down. And so if we recognize that, that's one of the valuable things that we can do, because then we can put some attention on our situation and begin to take steps to correct that. It's nice when we can do that ourselves. That is to say, when we can correct what's going on inside of us and make ourselves happier just by recognizing the fact that, oh, I'm really not feeling very good. That's due to, oh yeah, there's this situation that I haven't dealt with. Deal with the situation, and then feel reconnected with your life. And that's the most common thing. Most of these things are easily dealt with. But tonight I want to talk about, or want to, when we get to the group clearing session, go into those kinds of things that just don't go away very easily. Things that are very old or very deeply ingrained in our story of our lives and the things that we tell us about our lives, or that are very, very physiological. The physiological side of this is, I think, really quite fascinating. Psychologists discovered something that obviously people had been experiencing for a long time, and that is that just in the winter months, many people get depressed when they're not depressed the rest of the year. And that has to do with not getting enough exposure to sunlight, for two reasons. One, the days are much shorter, so there's much less light. And then the other reason is that we keep ourselves all bundled up. And so our pineal glands do not get any exposure to sunlight. And indeed, our bodies don't get any exposure to sunlight. And our summer tan, if we have one, fades away. And, we look pale, and we just don't feel very good. There are other components of that or things that come along with the winter months and the shorter daylight. And that is, of course, it's much colder. And so being cold gives us a feeling of contracting and holding ourselves in and together. I'm trying to do this. Can you see? Yeah, maybe you can see that all right on the video. Um, and so um, being cold contributes to the feeling that we don't have a lot of energy, that we're struggling to keep ourselves going. And then there are other factors that that all relate to the weather. The ice and the snow, we're afraid to go out, or we feel it's dangerous to go out. We may go out, but there a certain level of anxiety that comes with that we have to be so careful and not to have an accident, not to slip and fall. And I'm sure we all know people who have slipped on the ice and snow and have hurt themselves. And so, there's a natural tendency for most people to feel that they have to be on their guard all the time. They have to have their defense up against the cold, against the wind, and against the risk of falling on ice and snow and getting hurt. So all of these things come together in a physiological way. They literally change the way our bodies are functioning. It's an interesting thing that normally in the winter, our metabolism goes up so that we generate more heat within our body and keep ourselves warm. And if people keep their apartments or their homes quite warm, then their bodies, so to speak, don't get used to being in a cold environment. So they don't generate a lot of heat, as much heat as they would otherwise if they were in a cooler environment. And the result of that literally is their metabolism is not up to the winter months. It's not matching the winter months. And so when they go outside, or if there's a draft because of wind and such, they feel very, very cold. And that often happens, particularly with older people. They become very sensitive to the cold. Those of you that know Ayurveda know that that's a Vata response because Vata's nature is cold. And so when exposed to cold, Vata is increased. And therefore, those people really don't like the cold. And oftentimes, as a physician, I saw people literally make their physiological condition worse by keeping their living environment too warm. And it's much better to keep your environment cool and to sleep in a cooler temperature and then just put on adequate clothing. And then the body is in a state where it's generating more heat and your metabolism then is up to going out into the cold, and you'll feel actually quite good about it. I was always impressed that whenever I visited Europe, particularly in the colder months, the Europeans always keep windows in the bedroom cracked just a little bit to let some air in. And so they sleep in fresh, cold air. They turn the heat off in the bedroom and it gets quite cold. And those of you who have visited Europe know that Europeans generally sleep under very thick comforters. And it's quite a nice feeling. It's very cozy and you can stay warm. But because it is cold in the room, your body knows it has to generate heat in order to maintain itself. And the result then is one, very good sleep and a body that's ready to deal with the winter months. So these physiological things combine with the psychological things in the winter months. And the result can be that a person can get very, very depressed and have a hard time getting out of bed and have a hard time, doing their daily activities. They feel sad. And so this seasonal affective disorder, SAD, seasonal affective disorder is what the psychologist came up with as a name for this state, is something that comes in the winter months. And that by definition, people don't feel sad in the spring, summer, and fall. Only in the winter when both the temperature and the shorter daylight and then the holidays and everything else all combine and make people feel depressed. Now, of course, people who actually are depressed throughout the year often feel even worse in the winter for the same reasons. So winter is really a tough month in terms of our having an upbeat mood. Antidotes to that, of course, are to keep very active in the winter. Make sure you get plenty of exercise. It's very, very important, especially since the cold weather tends to make us stay in and not get out and exercise. But doing things outdoors, I ride my bike all winter. which I'm kind of proud of, actually, because I think it maintains my vitality. And when I ride, I do provide covering, but not nearly as much as one might think would be necessary. And even in very cold weather, when it's 15, 20 below zero, I ride my bicycle as long as it isn't icy. So, because I have my metabolism geared up to be able to handle that. And so getting plenty of exercise is a thing. Going to the gym, of course, is wonderful, or working out at home, however you like to do it. But actually doing it is a very important way of keeping the physiology revved up, keeping the physiology functioning in its natural state so that we don't get depressed. Other things, of course, you can do. You have to eat a good, nourishing diet. That's another important thing, because if we don't eat adequate diet, then again, the vata component of our physiology that's related to the cold and movement in our physiology gets out of balance. And so we feel very uncomfortable, and that can leave us with our energy down and feeling very weak and not wanting to do stuff. So again, diet always is a very significant component. And getting enough rest, of course, is always an important thing too. Depression tends to make us sleep more, but sometimes we don't sleep very well. And so getting to bed early, and even earlier than often we do in the summer, because it is dark, and letting the body get an adequate rest is a valuable thing. So going to bed early and then getting up early is a good thing. And these days I find myself waking up even before 5 o'clock, where normally I sleep till about 5:30 or 6. So I'm finding myself waking up 45 or even an hour uh, before, earlier than I did during the summer. So getting adequate rest is another essential component. And then the other thing, of course, is actually dealing with the things that make one uncomfortable, in terms of, celebrating the holidays or not celebrating the holidays, dealing with factors of loneliness, and why that is. Why are we feeling lonely? What can we do about it? Spending time with friends is often a very good antidote. Going to parties and that sort of thing. But of course, when you're feeling depressed, you don't want to go to parties. And so sometimes when that's significant, then we really need to get to work, and clear the energy that's underlying that. And sometimes that's done on the level of thinking about it. And there's various approaches that we can use. But the real essence of what we need to do when the depression is significant is change the energy within our bodies. And so, besides doing that on the physiological level, then sometimes we have to do that on the purely energetic level, the kind of work that I do with people, and what I will be doing here in the group clearing session in just a few minutes. So I think that gives us a nice survey of what goes on in the winter that makes us sad, and some of the things that we can do on a practical level to deal with that kind of feeling. But I think we'll take a few questions if there are any, and then we'll move into our group clearing session. Anybody in the room have a question, and anyone online, if you'll use the Q&A feature of Zoom and type your question, it is supposed to appear in front of me here on the screen. So I'll be happy to answer questions. Is there any question or comment about the things that I've been talking about? Don't all speak at once. Very good. You said it was useful. Okay. So I'm going to end this presentation then, and we'll set up for the group clearing session. And this recording then will end here.